To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigo Learn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
Morning, friends. I hope all of you are able to hear me, and all of you are also able to listen to my voice very clearly. All right, perfect. So I can see some messages which say, "Good morning. Yes, we can. Sure." All right, friends. So sorry for the delayed start. We had some technical issue in setting up the meeting, but now that we are ready to go, let's jump directly into the session. So, firstly, how is your preparation going? I hope that you guys have seen, the video lectures, and I hope that, by now you must have covered majority of the topics, and you are now in that phase where you are actually in the final run of your preparation, and exams are just around the corner. All right. So, what we are going to do today is we are going to basically talk on how to revise for the examination, what are the topics that we should be focusing on, and more importantly, what should be the strategy for the examination, both in terms of preparation and how we are going to approach the exam. All right. So, friends, when it comes to preparation for the exam, what I would want to tell you is costing is a subject which is very dynamic, and it is one of the favorite papers of the exam setters. Now, why is it favorite? Because the subject per se does not have boundaries. This subject does not have any limitation as to the creativity of the person who is setting the paper. So they have enough opportunity to test your skill sets. Now, when the examiner, the paper setter has enough opportunities to test your skill sets, how do we prepare for that? The answer is really very simple. We need to focus on the concepts. Now, when we say focus on the concepts, what am I trying to tell here? So, what we should do? What we should do is we should precisely understand each and every concept from a application point of view, rather from a point of view of using it in the examination. Now, what do we mean by using it from the point of application? So what we should do is we should probably learn each concept in such a way that we can apply the concept in any real scenario. For example, if someone is asking you to maybe calculate a break even point, we should be in a position to say, okay, for me to calculate break even point, we need certain information. We need information such as sales, we need the selling price, we need information such as the variable cost, and we need the information of fixed cost. If this information is available, then we can calculate the break even point. So what I'm trying to drive home here is we should know what is the input that is required in order to get the desired output. So like that, if we analytically look at every concept and then try to understand, okay, if a question is coming on a particular concept, what is the input that we require? Based on that, we will be able to derive the output. Okay, now let's come to the preparation strategy. See, friends, from the examination point of view, there will be about 20% weightage given for the theory questions and 80% weightage for the practical questions. Now, even when we talk about chapter wise or when we talk about topic wise, the institute, what they have done is they have divided the entire syllabus of costing into 4 sections. So what are the broad 4 sections that they have identified? One, they have said we will go for the overview of cost and management accounting, where they have covered the basic concepts of what is costing, what is cost accounting, what are the various types of cost we have, what is the behavioral pattern. So basically we are talking about the chapter number 1, and we are talking very briefly about what are the elements of cost, what are the types of cost, fixed cost, variable cost, so on and so forth. So this basically are those topics where we have the fundamental base, the theoretical points, the basis of theory and the other questions that we are having. So from this topic, we can expect about 5 to 10 marks, but these are all predominantly going to be theoretical questions. Now, even in the previous examinations, if we see what they have been asking questions such as identify the type of costing that is applicable to a particular industry. For example, they are giving you cement manufacturing and saying what is the applicable costing. What is the method of costing that will be applicable to that. They are giving us an airline industry and they are asking what is the applicable costing method for that. So like that, questions based on applicability will be there. Then they will ask us difference between what is fixed cost and what is variable cost. They may have theoretical questions such as opportunity cost, what are relevant cost, what are irrelevant cost. Then they can have some similar questions which are based on cost concepts. Then the second section, which I will say is the core of the subject, are the three main topics, which is the material cost, the labor cost, and the overhead cost. Now, these three topics will be there in every other topic that we study. Whether you are doing process costing, batch costing, contract costing, any of the methods of costing, or you're doing contract cost, marginal costing, standard costing, budgetary, all the questions, all the topics, all the concepts of these other topics will have some element of material cost, labor cost or employee cost, and overhead. In fact, these other topics talk of how to deal with each of these three elements. So it is very important for us to understand what these costs are. What are the costs that we will consider as material cost, employee cost, and then overhead cost. Well, friends, here the way I want you to approach the subject is when we are talking about material cost, employee cost, and overhead cost, in these topics, we are more specifically trying to understand what are the items of cost that are going to be considered as a part of the material cost, employee cost, or overhead cost. For example, when we are procuring material, when we are purchasing material, so shall we include the basic cost as a cost of the material? What should we do with the GST that we are paying? The CGST, SGST, IGST, should we include it in the cost of the product or should we not include it in the cost of the product? If we are getting some discount from the company, whether we should include, whether we should exclude. What should we do if it is a cash discount? What should we do if it is a quantity discount? So these are the certain, small points which we will have to carefully understand in arriving at the cost of the material. Now, once we know what is the cost of the material, then we will be able to use this direct cost per material in the other topics that we have, such as the marginal costing, standard costing, so on and so forth. So friends, what we need to do is we need to understand what is the items going into the cost of the material. Generally, when we look at the questions, generally when we look at various other topics, they will give us the unit cost or they will give us the direct material cost straight away in the question. So when we have a question on marginal costing, we will not have multiple information about the procurement of the material. Instead, they will say direct material cost per unit is 10. So we simply take that number and go ahead. But then if the examiner, if the paper setter wants to get creative, what they will do is they will merge the two concepts. They will give you details of the cost of the purchase of material. They will talk about the taxes. They will talk about wastage. They will talk about normal, handling loss in the material and include it in the question on marginal costing or include it in the question of standard costing. So what we will have to do is each concept we will have to learn as a stepping stone. All right. Now, so when we talk about material, that is one aspect. The other important aspect in material is your maintenance of record. So whether to use FIFO method, LIFO method, weighted average method. So how the inventory comes in, how the inventory goes out, what are the valuation methods that we are going to use. Those are the questions which they generally ask. Then coming to labor, earlier, when I say earlier, maybe 3-4 years back, there were a lot of plans. There were a lot of wage payment systems that were included in the syllabus. But now drastically they have reduced it down to only two, which is the Half-Lease plan and the Rowan system. So you need to be very, very clear with these two systems, and there is a high chance, high probability that if a question is coming from labor, you will have a question which is based on this topic. All right. So before we go further, one thing which I forgot mentioning in the material topic is your various levels. So we have the reorder level, maximum level, economic order quantity, the cost comparison between the current cost and the EQ, economic order quantity cost. So those are also some important questions which are given in the examination. Now, friends, if you look at the difficulty level of such questions, the difficulty level is very minimal or very little. So when we talk about topics such as material, labor, and overheads, the difficulty level of the questions is not great. So what I would strongly suggest, what I would strongly recommend is you focus on these three topics, solve extensively. Generally, the questions also that we see in the exams are based on previous year papers or previous questions, or sometimes directly out of the study material, to that extent where they don't even change the numbers. Okay, so the creativity which the examiner can show in these three topics is very little, or generally we have seen that they don't show much creativity. So I would say these are the three topics or four topics where we can be very, very confident and where we can score the marks. So, sir, how much is the weightage for these three topics? So, if I say material, labor, overheads put together, at least 2 or 3 questions you can get in the examination, and the weightage can be anywhere from 20 marks to 25 marks. So, it can be a blend. You can have 5-mark questions, and definitely for sure, couple of 10-mark questions will be there. And if we can add the cost sheet and the method of accounting to it. So we have the integrated system and non-integrated system of maintaining cost accounts, the two topics. If we can add these two topics also, so these 5 topics put together, we will have about 40 to 45 marks. So on the lower side also, if I take at least 35 marks, you will get from these topics. Now, what is a cost sheet? See, cost sheet basically, we are just summarizing the numbers that are given in the question. We usually don't do any new calculations in the preparation of cost sheet. The questions based on cost sheet that are given to us, basically all the information is given in the question. What we need to do is we need to just classify them appropriately. We need to classify them correctly and then prepare the cost sheet. So when I say classify them correctly, we will have to identify what items have to go into the prime cost, what items have to go into the factory overheads, what items have to be considered as selling and distribution overheads. So if we can classify the items properly and if we can summarize them, then the cost sheet as such does not require new calculations to be done. So if you practice a lot and if you do enough problems practically, you will be able to easily crack the questions on cost sheet. Because in the cost sheet, they are directly going to give you the numbers of material, labor, overhead, and certain items such as quality cost, research and development cost. So those are the areas in the cost sheet which you have to be careful with. So maybe you guys can make a note of it. What you have to specifically be careful in the preparation of your cost sheet is items such as your research and development cost. So how to treat them. We have covered them extensively in our videos. So we need to be very, very clear. Those are the tricky points. So how to deal with the research and development cost, how to deal with the quality cost, how to deal with the sales revenue that we generate on the sale of scrap. So sometimes there is wastage. This wastage is sold in the market, we generate some revenue. Generally, when we are preparing cost sheet, we are talking about all items of cost. But then during the production process, if there is some scrap, some wastage, we generate revenue on that. So how to adjust for that? So these are the 3-4 tricky points in the cost sheet, which we should probably be careful about. So if you're careful about that, if you have practiced enough, then cost sheet preparation is going to be really simple, and you're definitely going to get a question on that. Either a 5-mark question. So if it is a 5-mark question, it will be mostly like give me the prime cost or calculate the cost of production. If it is a 10-mark question, it will be prepare the entire cost sheet, arrive at the cost of sales, or maybe sometimes they can say calculate the profit. So these, 4 topics, the material, labor, overhead, and cost sheet put together can give you decent amount of marks. And these 4 topics, along with the cost concepts, what is fixed, what is variable, what is semi-variable, what is controllable, what is not controllable, the cost concepts, you can easily cover about 50 marks out of the question paper. Now, why am I stressing so much on these 4-5 topics? The only reason that I'm stressing upon being very comfortable with these 4-5 topics is, one, the element of creativity that you can expect is going to be minimum. So there is, great amount of certainty as to what type of questions we are going to get. Second, the questions generally are not going to be time consuming. See, when I say time consuming, a question on standard costing is going to take way more time than a question on simple calculation of labor payment or simple reorder level calculations. Those are 4-5 line item solutions when you really look at them. But yes, there are questions such as preparation of various accounts, the maintenance of integrated system, non-integrated system based questions, where it is going to take time. But then by and large, the questions from these topics are not going to take time. So you need to really focus on that. And friends, as a part of your preparation strategy, see, back then when I was preparing for my exams and when I used to study, I actually made a small diary, a small journal. You can have a small notebook of whatever it is. And what I used to do is, whenever I came across a question which I was not able to solve in the first go, so I carefully, silently used to make a note of that, chapter number, question number, and page number. What was my objective? My objective was, if I, went wrong the first time, or if I was not able to solve a particular question in the first go, the first time, there are high chances that I may not be able to do the same question the second time. Or rather, let me put it the other way. If I was able to do a question in the first go, so when I'm looking at a question for the first time, just with the concepts that I know, if I'm able to solve it, then there is a high possibility that I will be able to solve it the second time also. But then, if I was not able to solve it in the first go for the first time when I'm looking at the question, chances are I might have some difficulty doing it the second time also. So by noting this down, what I'm actually doing is I am preparing a list of questions. I'm preparing a list of concepts which I need to revise, which I need to actually look at again, which I need to strengthen. So basically, those lists are the concepts or are the questions where I need to still work upon, where my concepts are not that great. I probably will go back to the book, or I will go back to the video. I will re-look at the concept. I will re-understand the concept, and I will practice it to such an extent that I should be able to, really solve the question. So that was one. Second, what I always used to do was, while solving a question, it might be an easy question also, I might be able to solve it for the first time also. But if there is a new concept, or if there is a new piece of information which I have seen for the first time, which was not there in any of the previous questions, then I will make a note of it. That look, there is something new in this, which was not there in other questions, and I need to focus. I need to, kind of make an inventory of such items. So, when you're doing the first revision, I'm assuming that, you have already seen the lectures, you have done the first reading. So as far as the concepts are concerned, the first time reading and learning of that, you have completed. Now, when you're doing or when you're going for the first revision, what I really suggest and I expect from each one of you is start making a list of questions where, you are not able to do it for the first time. So if there are such tricky questions, if there are such tricky concepts, silently make a note of it. All right. Why are we making a note of it? So that when we are doing the second revision, we will focus on those topics. Not only that, one day before the exam, when you have only 24 hours to read the subject and to, go into the exam room, you know precisely which are those pain points, which are those painful areas that we should be working upon. Because see, costing is a subject wherein if you're clear one time, you're clear 100 times. 1 plus 1 is equals to 2, how many ever times you try it on the calculator. Unless you're going fundamentally or conceptually wrong somewhere. So that is where you'll have to work upon. All right. So let's go a little further. So you can have about 10 to 15 percentage, 10 to 15 marks on your theory from initial topics. Then if you talk about material, labor, overhead, and the cost accounting system, we can easily have about 30 to 35 marks. Put together, we'll be able to attempt for 50 marks. Now, friends, one very important topic is your activity based costing system. Now, this I am saying is important because in each of the question paper, I am seeing a question on ABC. And generally, ABC, you will have questions around ABC. So you need to be really very clear in, ABC. And I would suggest you practice, you solve as many questions as possible. Maybe you go back to previous year questions. Maybe you go back to, maybe RTPs, you go back to some questions from the old syllabus. They are available on the institute's website. Solve as many questions as possible on ABC. Now, what is wonderful about ABC is at best or maximum, you will have 5 to 6 different type of sums. And from the 7th question onwards, what you will realize is everything is same, but for the numbers. So if you have practiced about 5, 6, 7 questions and in a systematical manner, the way we do it, in our solutions or approach, you calculate, you identify what are the various activities, you identify what is the cost pool of the activity, you identify what are the cost drivers, what is the rate per cost driver, and then after making these 4 workings, systematically go to the preparation of activity based cost sheet. There is nothing that can go wrong. So again, ABC is a concept where the amount of creativity that the examiner can probably put to test is little when compared to the other topics. Definitely it is going to be higher than your material, labor and overheads, but then it is going to be lesser when compared to standard costing, marginal costing and budget. But it's a very important topic. 5 to 10 marks for sure. One question definitely it is going to be from this activity based costing system. Now, why it is important? See, activity based costing principles are the principles of the future. So many companies are adopting this, and it is a very futuristic concept. So it is definitely going to be a favorite subject and favorite topic for the examiners to test you on. In fact, most of the questions that you're going to, concepts and questions that we will learn at the final stage are going to be based on the activity based costing. So make sure that you're practicing enough questions from this. All right. Now, When we come to the second, or rather the third section, now in the third section, what we have is we have the various methods of costing. So we have the single, output, batch, process, construction account, service sector, operating costing, so on and so forth. Now, every method of costing is, applicable to a different kind of industry. So we will have to understand which method is more appropriate to a particular industry. Most of the times, what will happen is in the question, they will, give you information and they will directly ask you the cost per unit, or they will ask you the, profit per unit, or they'll ask you to prepare the cost sheet. But here, what you will have to first do is you will have to identify which method of costing is going to be applicable. So if they are talking about, making certain medicines in batches, what should first strike you is batch costing is going to be more relevant. If they have given, or if they are talking about, a construction contract, then we should know they are talking about contract costing. So we should be able to identify which method to adopt to solve a particular question. Now, the methods of costing, that is the single, output, batch, process, joint product, byproduct, construction and service sector put together, we are having about 20 to 25 marks, or maybe in rare cases 30 marks that they can give in the examination. Now, if you further bifurcate this, the job costing, batch costing, contract costing, these are relatively simpler. And these are not the questions which are lengthy. But when we talk about process costing and probably, service sector costing, there can be a few trick points. So, process costing, again, it is going to be very systematic. The examiners are not going to be very creative in that, but the challenge here is that it is going to be lengthy. So we will have to prepare various process accounts. We will have to prepare maybe normal wastage account, abnormal wastage account at times, depending upon the requirements of the question. The chances are the questions are going to be very, very lengthy, and it's going to be very time consuming in solving the process costing topics. But then again, if I have to, summarize, if you solve multiple questions, it will all boil down to 6 or 7 types of questions, which are generally asked in the question. So you will have to prepare for, how the question is to be dealt with when there is work in progress. So if there are if there is opening work in progress, closing work in progress, wherein, we have spent 100% in terms of material, 50% in terms of labor, or sometimes they'll say material cost is executed to the incurred to the extent of 80%, labor is complete to the extent of 60%, or any ratio thereon. We will have to remember that we should use the concept of equivalent number of units. So that calculation of equivalent number of units is going to be very, very important, and that concept is going to be tricky. So the chances are, if a 10-mark question is given from process costing, there is a very high likelihood that you will have some element of computation related to equivalent units, wherein you have some opening WIP, partially completed units, and some closing WIP, partially completed units. And what happens further is this gets a little, tricky when they also give the method of cost, accounting to be followed. So if they say FIFO, we have to deal with it separately. If they say LIFO, there is a separate method of dealing with it. On the other hand, if they say weighted average, then we will have to use the same equivalent unit concepts, but then you'll have to adopt a different approach. So what I would recommend is you identify those 2 or 3 questions, all right, which is covering the entire length and breadth of process costing, wherein you have 2 or 3 processes through which the product passes. You have normal wastage, you have abnormal wastage. I mean, normal loss, abnormal loss. Sometimes there can also be abnormal gain. So identify those questions where you have all permutation combinations. Identify the questions where they have also given the equivalent number of units, the opening WIP, the closing WIP. Identify such 3 or 4 questions which you will be practicing not only when you're doing the revision first time, second time, but also one day before the examination. Because if you're able to solve those 2-3 questions, then automatically rest of the simpler questions you will be able to address. And friends, please make sure, especially in process costing and contract costing, that you are drawing up the ledger accounts. All right. Please make sure that you are actually preparing the T accounts, the debit, credit, and you're writing all the information and then doing it. See, friends, out of my experience, what I have understood is students, they try to read costing as a subject. I'm serious. Students try to read costing just like how they read law or how they read audit or maybe how they read direct taxes. But friends, accounts, costing, and these are the subjects which cannot be read. These are the subjects which have to be solved. You cannot listen to costing. You cannot read costing. You will have to solve the problems. You will have to, practically pick up the pen, paper, and do the questions. Because only if you start solving, you will realize that you're getting, what are the areas that you're getting stuck at. And friends, the questions, may be big, the questions may be difficult, but then the solutions are always simple. And most of the times, even in the videos, I keep, mentioning, most of the times, the hint is in the question only. What the examiner does is they give a lot of information. They give, 3, 4, 5 requirements as bits. Now, these bits are usually systematically arranged. They are sequential. It's more like, you have to solve the first bit to be able to come up with the answer for second bit. Because second bit will require some information which is calculated in the first bit. So always try to do this in a sequential manner. The questions may be big, but if you actually break down the questions, you start making working notes. You identify the small element in the question, prepare a small working note, go to the next item, use the working results from the first working, prepare the second working, then prepare the third working, and eventually you go for the final statement. What students generally do and where they generally go wrong is they try to jump directly in solution. Don't try to prepare the answer or statement or the solution directly. Generally, if a bit is, if there is a question, which is a 10-mark question, there will be 4, 5, 6 backup, workings, which will be required, smaller workings, smaller details, which will be required to be able to actually prepare the statement that the question is asking for. So when you're reading the question, see if you can break down. See if you can, identify small working notes and start answering them, start noting them down. And friends, it's a very wonderful thing. The evaluation is always going to happen stepwise. So it's like if you're having a 10-mark question, which is asking you to prepare a statement, of maybe cost per unit or maybe operating statement for, carrying out operations for 1 month, etc. The chances are that 8 marks are going to be for the working notes and just 2 marks are going to be for the statement that you're preparing. So if there is a student who has, prepared 8 workings, let's say out of the 8 workings, 5 are correct, 3 are wrong. And based on these 8 workings, they have prepared a statement. Obviously, the answer is going to be wrong because 3 workings are wrong. So obviously the entire statement answer is going to be wrong. But then for the 5 correct workings, you can expect stepwise marking. So always my suggestion is don't jump directly into preparation of the statement. See if you can break down. See if you can have small workings. The chances are, even if your solution is wrong, you will still get about 50% of the marks in the question. All right. This third section that we are talking about is the methods of costing. You need extensive practice in process costing and in contract costing. Now, friends, the creativity, the real creativity can be there in the service sector costing, because see, service sector costing is emerging sector. For manufacturing, you have typical cost. You have the direct material cost, you have the direct labor cost, and you have the overhead cost. Typically we will calculate the cost per unit or per batch and so on and so forth. But now what is emerging is the service sector. There are new services coming up every day. For example, you're using your cred, which is a credit card application which gives you bonus points. So they have a completely different revenue model. You have Swiggy, you have Zomato. So these are not typically manufacturing and selling something. These are not typically trading also. These are all service oriented. So they have different types of cost. They have different streams of cost. They have different streams of revenue. So service sector questions are going to be some questions where the examiner can really get creative. Now, what is the key in answering the questions based on the service sector? The key here is identifying the cost unit. See, sometimes the question will be given on the transport sector. They will say certain goods have to be transported from A location to B location. The question will ask us calculate the cost per ton of transportation. So we will have to summarize the entire information, calculate the cost per ton. For the same set of information, the question can also say calculate the cost per trip. My information is not going to change, my cost is not going to change, but the cost unit in terms of which we have to express, that has changed. So instead of dividing by the number of tons, we will divide by the number of trips. Or the examiner can make it more complicated. They will say, I want to know the cost per kilometer. So not trips, not tons, kilometers. Okay, we will give them kilometers. As long as these are single cost units, good. But then they can become more creative. They can be more creative and they can say, give us the cost per ton kilometer. So there, you have to convert the base into number of ton kilometers. They'll say for a hospital, per patient, per treatment, per day, per patient, per treatment, per patient day, so on and so forth. So the key is going to be identifying what is the cost unit in terms of which they are wanting to, wanting us to do the calculation. So, you need to be really very careful there. Again, the key is every time you come across a new industry, a question based on a new industry or new concept, please make a small list, have it ready for your revision. And wherever the questions you're, coming across some items which are tricky, make a note of it, maybe highlight it, keep it ready so that you can come back and do it the second time. Then the last section is your cost control and analysis, where we are having the three important topics, which is the standard costing, marginal costing, and your budget and budgetary control. Now friends, these three topics put together will have a weightage of about 20 to 25 percent. Generally you'll have one 5-mark question and two maybe 10-mark questions coming from this topic. Now, out of these three topics, if I have to rate them in terms of difficulty, the easiest is your budget and budgetary control. And what I have noticed is if a theory question has to come, generally the theory questions, I'm not saying always, I'm saying generally, it comes from budget and budgetary control. So they talk about budget manual, or they talk about zero-based budgeting, or they talk about some concept of budgeting, fixed budget, flexible budget, so on and so forth. So the chances of a theory question is more from the budget and budgetary control. And even otherwise, what I have seen is generally a 5-mark question is given from budget and budgetary control, wherein they ask you to prepare a small production budget or a sale budget or labor budget, and so on and so forth. If there are questions, which they have to give from budget for 10 marks, then generally the past trend is they ask us to prepare a flexible budget, wherein they give us the numbers, the stats for 50% capacity level or 60% capacity level, and then they will ask us to extrapolate it for 80%, 100%, 90%, so on and so forth. So budget and budgetary control is a topic which you should practice. You should make sure that out of the three topics, standard, marginal, and budget and budgetary control, you are giving enough time and focus on budget and budgetary control. What I have seen is students generally skip this or avoid this, because what happens is by the time they reach the last chapter of the book, they are maybe tired, they don't have time left, they are exhausted, they are running short of time, they don't have patience. But I would suggest do that first. So if you ask me, sir, whether I should do standard, marginal, or budget first, I will say prepare for budget first. It is simpler. The chances are you will get more easy questions from that. Now, coming to marginal costing, see, marginal costing is, a concept, is a topic where the examiner can use utmost amount of creativity. But at the same time, I will say marginal costing is based on only 2 or 3 fundamental concepts. That is your contribution, PV ratio, break-even point. If you know these 3 fundamental concepts, sales is equals to what? Fixed cost plus profit. Or I will say contribution is equals to fixed cost plus profit. Sales is equals to cost plus profit. If you know that equation, if you know, okay, sales is equals to cost plus profit, cost can be broken down into fixed cost and variable cost. And generally sales minus variable cost is contribution, if you can take the variable cost to the other side. So if you know the linkage between these 3 items, and if you're able to calculate the PV ratio, if you're very clear how the break-even point is computed, what is margin of safety, then the chances are there cannot be a question which goes beyond these 2 or 3 topics. Now, within the marginal costing, the way I look at it is I look at it in 3 parts. One is the concepts of contribution, PV ratio, break-even point, margin of safety, and other computations where you will have questions which are related to these items. All right, calculation of basic details. Second, you will have questions which are based on reconciliation of profits or analysis of profits between marginal costing and absorption costing. So they will give you information. They will ask you to prepare a statement as per marginal costing. They will ask you to prepare profitability statement as per absorption costing, and they will say reconcile the 2 profits. So there, that concept has to be very clear. The third item, the third area are the questions which are based on decision making. So they are going to use the concepts that we have learned of PV ratio, break-even point, margin of safety, so on and so forth, and use these concepts for creating questions on decision making. So within the marginal costing, topic, if I have to say the 3 areas, these are the 3 areas. The first area, the concepts, absolutely no chance that you can leave it. You have to be crystal clear. And I am saying these concepts are the entire base for your CFN. So there is no way in which you cannot understand that. So you have to do that. Marginal costing, absorption costing, you have only one question or one pattern which is available. You need to be very clear with that. So with that, 60% of your coverage will be over. And then decision making. So this is something where the institute can get very creative. So even if I give you 500 questions, there can be the 501st question which they can come up with. So that is a question where you'll have to apply and try to logically solve. So I would suggest be very clear with your concepts. Be aware of the reconciliation between absorption and marginal. and try to solve as many questions as you can with an open mind. So it's not like, okay, these are the only 10 or 15 questions which can come from decision making. What I have seen is every exam, a new question comes up if it is on decision making. So, you need to be prepared for that. With that, what I would want to suggest is, your mindset training. See, we should always be prepared for the unexpected when it comes to costing as a paper. If you take out any question paper, any, when I say any, you go back 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, in every question paper, there will be at least 15 to 20 marks, which is unseen. What do you mean by unseen? These questions are not, picked out from your previous exams or study material or RTPs or just substitution of numbers. These are some 15 to 20 marks which are created, which are new. So, which were not seen before. So these 15 to 20 marks, we will have to apply our creativity. What I would recommend, friends, is when you're reading the question paper, you should have the ability, you should have the skill to identify which are those 15 to 20 marks which you have not seen. Recommendation would be, try to go for those 15 or 20 marks, try to solve those only at the end. Don't try to attempt those questions as your first questions. First, we will always try to attempt questions which are easy, relatively simple. We have seen that before. And we know how to solve. So examination time is not the time when we are trying to learn something. It's a time where we are putting our skills to test. Answer the known questions first, and then based on the time permitted, if you have enough time, go for these items. And any which ways, you will have about one choice question. You will have the first part, which is compulsory. Out of the second part, from 6 questions, you will have one choice question. So out of those 15, 20, maybe 5, 10 marks can go away in choice. There'll be about 10 marks which compulsorily you'll have to attempt. So you will have to, strategize your solution. Then, friends, coming to the last topic, it is the standard costing. Many students are scared of this topic, but I personally love this topic, and the way that we have learned it, very conceptual, understanding whose responsibility each of the variances are. The basic, calculations become really simple. So I would suggest, look at each type of variance: material variance, labor variance, your fixed overhead variances, and sales variance from the perspective of who is responsible for that variance. Try to stick to 1 or 2 questions for your conceptual clarity. There is a high probability and possibility that you will be able to solve these questions. Now, if your luck is really bad, if the question paper is really tough, then extreme scenarios, there can be questions which will be, they will give us the variances and they will say back calculate. They will say fixed overhead variance is so much, variable overhead expenditure variance, variable overhead volume variances, so much positive, so much negative, favorable, adverse, and they will ask us to back calculate the numbers. So those are, questions which are going to be extreme case scenarios. But I would suggest, be clear with the basics, fundamentals, and concepts. So, these are the topics and the weightages that are covered. Now, from a strategy perspective, focus first on the core topics: material, labor, overhead. Then I would suggest you prepare for the budget and budgetary control, prepare for your marginal costing. Then you go and prepare for your methods of costings, wherein you cover the job costing, batch costing, process costing, service sector, and all of that. And then again come back to standard costing as your last topic. All right. Standard costing is simple, but then, at times it can get really tricky. So what I really would suggest is probably keep it as the last topic from two reasons. One, you don't get confused while you're solving all the other topics. All the other topics, the 13, 14 of them, have nothing to do with standard costing. But standard costing has everything to do with all the other topics. So, once we come to standard, it's a presumption that we know all the other topics. So I will always keep it as the last. Second, what you read towards the end, there is a high probability that you will be able to solve it correctly in your examination. So strategically also, I would suggest you keep it towards the end. Now, friends, I'll take 5 minutes to probably take you through how you will do the pacing of your examination and how to actually approach the paper in the exam room. Friends, the first 15 minutes that we get to read the question paper, I would say those are the 15 most important minutes of the entire 3 hour 15 minutes. Now, why do I say so? Because in these 15 minutes, you have to identify which are the questions, which are the topics you're comfortable with, and which are the topics you're not comfortable with. See, friends, those 15 minutes, honestly, trust me, will not be sufficient for you to read each and every question in depth. Those 15 minutes will not be sufficient for you to identify all the intricacies that are there in the question. So if a student actually starts reading the questions in depth, maybe 15 minutes will be over and he'll reach third or fourth question. He or she will be left with the remaining questions to be read. So in these 15 minutes, what you have to do is you have to quickly glance through the question and look at the requirements of each question. All right. So don't read the question in detail. Glance through the question, look at the requirements. What is our objective? Our objective is to identify from which topic it is. Is it from standard costing? Is it from marginal costing? Is it a method of costing, process costing based question, or is it something else? So we need to identify on which topic it is. And second, if you look at the requirement, you will be able to assess, what is the depth of the question. Is it a lengthy question? Is it a short question? So the chances are you will be able to make that assessment. Now, in these 15 minutes, if you are able to, categorize into topic wise and into, which questions are lengthy, which questions are short. For example, see if you come across a question which is based on, cost accounting method, and if they are asking you to prepare all the, control accounts, obviously it is going to take time. The question might be easy, but in order to solve it will take about 15-20 minutes. So you need to just get a hang and a sense of which questions are short, which questions are lengthy. If you can do that, then you go for the easiest questions first. Always, try to, attempt the questions on the topics which you're comfortable with. Start preparing small working notes. Start answering the questions. And, we keep getting questions, sir, is it necessary that we have to answer the paper in a specific order? Answer is no. You can answer the first question, then you can answer the third question, then you can go for the fifth question, you can come back and answer the second question. But then within a question, or I would say, if you are answering the first question, just make sure that all the bits of the first question, if there are 4 bits or 5 bits, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, they are all together. Sir, is it required to be in order? Are we supposed to write 1A first, then 1B, then 1C, then 1D? No. You can do 1A, then you can, do 1B, 1D, 1C, 1E, whatever order, but please make sure all the bits of question 1 are together. But sir, I have a problem. I know 1B, that is the best question. I want to answer it first. Then I want to answer 1D. Can I do that? Yes, you can do that. then sir, actually 1C and 1A, I want to answer, but I don't want to answer it now. I am not very comfortable. I would probably, want to come back towards the end and answer that question. What should I do? Since I have started first question and you're saying answer all the four questions of, four bits of that question together, what should I do? It is very simple. Leave pages. Leave maybe a couple of pages. Leave 3 pages. Leave 1 page extra and go ahead to the next question. Start with the second question or third question or whichever question you want to answer. And then towards the end or in between, whenever you want to come back, answer 1C. Just make sure that you are leaving enough pages. See, the institute is not going to mind or it is not going to cut any marks for leaving an extra page. Only thing that you have to ensure is once you have completed writing a paper, whatever extra pages are left, just strike it off. So they will not consider it for your evaluation. So you will have to, identify easy questions, the questions and topics which you are comfortable with. And based on those questions, you decide the sequence. So the first 15 minutes, just spend on identifying the sequence. Now, what also happens is I have heard reviews from so many students. Sir, the question paper was very easy. All the questions were the questions which I had seen earlier. I knew everything. But sir, when I was solving one question on process costing or when I was solving one question on marginal costing, I got stuck. Somehow I was not able to crack it, but I knew that I can do it. I ended up spending extra time on that question. I ended up spending 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then, sir, I was neither able to do this question, nor I was able to complete the other questions in time. Because of that, instead, in spite of knowing all the answers, I could not complete the paper. Friends, please make sure that you do time allocation properly. See, there are 100 marks and we have 180 minutes. So you have about 1.8 minutes for every mark. I would say you consider it as 150 minutes instead of 180 minutes. You allocate only 1.5 minutes for every mark. So if there is a question for 10 marks, what is the maximum time allowance? 10 marks into 1.5 minutes, 15 minutes. All right, you please keep a time tab. If you're not able to do it in 15 minutes, you do an assessment. Okay, there are 3, 4, 5 more workings left. At best, I will take 4, 5 minutes more. Give it a shot. Because anyways, you have 1.8 minutes per mark. You have budgeted only 1.5. So give yourself those 2, 3 extra minutes. That is okay. But please make sure you are not, spending too much of time on a question. So maximum, restrict yourself to 16, 17, 18 minutes for a 10 mark question. Even if it is, you have come halfway, if you have come 70%, it is advisable to, maybe give it a break and solve the other questions. Why am I saying that? Because see, stepwise marking is always going to be beneficial. So there are high chances that, you will get more marks in stepwise marking. But friends, in no way I'm saying that, you should not complete your questions. 15 minutes, if you're able to solve 90%, give yourself those extra 2-3 minutes, complete the question and go to the next question. But don't get stuck with one question. Maximum 20 minutes, cut the question, go to the next question. Why am I saying this? Because see, if there is a question and if you're able to solve it in the first go, the chances are it is not going to take more than 15 minutes. If you are stuck somewhere, how much ever you try, you will be stuck there. If you go wrong in a particular question, your mood will get upset. You may get disturbed and you will carry forward, carry that emotion to the next question. We don't want that. We don't want to become emotional in the exam hall. So keep that time budget and, appreciate the questions. Be prepared that there can be situations, there can be scenarios, there can be questions which will come out of nowhere. Okay. Let me be very, very honest. Even if a question paper is given to me, if I sit like a student and write in the exam hall, there can be some 5 or 10 marks, which I'm not saying cannot be solved, but will require some thought process, will require some application, which may take additional time. If I have to write as a student, see, if I have 4 hours, if I have unlimited time, I'll solve everything at leisure. But my objective is to finish it in 3 hours. So I will be very choosy, I will be very selective, I will respect the difficult questions, and I will, answer the easy questions, take marks out of the easy questions. I will, always keep time for theory questions, because theory questions conceptually nothing they are testing. It's only either we know the theory or we don't know the theory. If you know the theory, write the theory systematically, take your marks. So you need to pace out your questions, and always give your working notes. Working notes is the key. All right. So friends, this is, what I wanted to share in terms of how we should be approaching the time that we have for revision. Prepare a journal, identify the concepts and questions which are difficult, which you want to revise for the second time, third time. We have also discussed which topics, what is the weightage, how we are going to structurize the topics, and then, how you want to go for the examination and the strategy there. So probably what we'll do is, now I will throw it open for questions. So friends, if you're having any questions, etc., if you're having any doubts, maybe feel free to one by one ask the questions, and then we can take it up for discussion. So who wants to go first? So any questions, friends? Maybe you can put it in the message box, or you can raise your hand. So any specific topics where you're facing difficulty, want help, anything, I mean, in whichever way we at Indigo Learn can help you, please let us know. So do we have MCQs in the question paper?
In costing subject per se, there are no MCQs in the syllabus, but we are in the process of providing MCQs for as part of our app. The work is in progress. It will come in some time, but the exam you're not asked MCQs. You have MCQs only in law, auditing, EISSM, and your income tax and GST. 4 subjects. Just to clarify, in case anyone has any further queries on MCQs.
Thank you, Sriram, for that. So, how to prepare for theory questions? See, what you have to ensure for theory questions is, at the end of each topic, there are a set of 6, 7, 8 questions given in the institute's material. So one, if you can map those to probably the concepts that we have dealt, it will be easier for you to understand. Now, what you can do as a suggestion is, you prepare a small journal wherein you write the question and 4 or 5 important bullet points, the side concepts, the subtopics that you want to touch upon. So maybe if they are asking you what are the prerequisites of a good costing system, then you should know what are the side headings that are important for that. Now again, friends, when you're writing and attempting theory questions, what happens generally is, theory questions are given as the 7th question, and there will be 5 or 6 questions, and then they'll give you a choice. Now these questions usually are either for 4 marks or 5 marks. Now what generally I have seen is, they give weightage for each correct point about 1 mark. So if you're answering to the point, and if you are having 5 correct points, you're going to get, chances are at least 4 marks for that. But what I have seen is, students, they just try to read, try to write theory for the sake of writing. So if you write the same sentence twice in 2 different ways, they are not going to give you additional marks. So when it comes to theory and writing it in the exam, it's not the question of how many points you have written, what is the length of your answer. It is about how many relevant points you have written. So if you can write those relevant points in simple English also, all right, the chances are you are going to score more. Now, how to prepare for the theory questions? There are two, three, good ideas to go about it. One, I have already shared, prepare a list of questions which are there at the backside and maybe have side headings ready. If you can revise them one day before the exam, that would be great. Second is, you go through the practice manuals. So there are practice manuals available on the institute's website and previously also. So you prepare a list of, topic wise questions that were asked and again the side heading. So generally what I have seen is they don't ask theory questions outside of this. So if you have covered the questions which are given behind the institute's material and what is there in the practice manual, more than sufficient. And one more third important way in which you can approach this is if you can maybe spend some time in smartly studying. So what you can do is you can quickly, pull out 5, 6, 7 year papers from the institute's website and prepare a list of theory questions that are given. The chances are you will see the theory questions are getting repeated. So if they have to give a question from budget and budgetary control, if you look at 6 years of question papers, chances are 3 questions are getting repeated every time. So prepare for those 3 questions. Now, what books do we need to refer for looking at this theory? I strongly believe that the institute's material is good. You can look at the theory points from there, and what I have ensured is whatever notes have been shared with you, the language used there, the order used, the side headings used are as close as possible to the material given by the institute. So I think that should suffice. If you have Priyadarshini any specific question, maybe you can put that. But then if you ask me the approach for preparing for theory questions, I think that would be it. At best there will be around maybe all right. So Ashim, sir, how to remember the concepts? Do I need to read the entire book? Ashim, as I was telling earlier, costing and accounts. As a matter of fact, these are subjects which cannot be read. So how to remember the concept? It is simple. You need to take small examples. Maybe you can, do small numerical examples of your own and try to understand the concept. See, it's a matter of understanding the concept and not remembering the concept. Personally, I try not to remember the formulas. I try to understand it. So, maybe if you're doing marginal costing, all right, and if you say, sir, okay, what is contribution? I will say randomly take up a number of whatever you like as the selling price. Take a number, whatever you like as variable cost. So let's say if I'm selling a pen at rupees 10, and you assume that the cost is 7. So 10 every time I sell is my revenue. 7 is the cost, variable cost of making that. So what remains with us? What remains is 3. Now this 3 from a conceptual perspective or from the textbook approach, they call it as contribution. But if you can try to understand that okay, this 3 is nothing but every time you have to make and sell, what is the extra incremental cost? That is 3. So the extra cost is 7, the contribution is 3. This 3 rupees will be available for meeting our fixed cost. So if you can take your own numerical examples and probably note down, that will become easier. So what I recommend Ashim here specifically is maybe you can have or maintain a notebook wherein for every concept that you come across, give a suitable heading, take your own numbers, all right, and try to work it out. So it can be as simple as if in my lectures I have taken a number, you substitute it with your number because it is yours. All right, you will have more linkage to that. You will appreciate those better, and the chances are that you will remember it better. So maybe you can, put the concept heading as contribution. You can note down the numbers which I have given as, for the sake of example. You can use your own numbers and also show how it is, working out, or how the concept is functioning. So with that, what will happen is you will develop some sense of ownership, some sense of liking, and some connect, because those at the end of the day are your numbers. So with that, you will be able to understand them better. And once you understand, it's like automatically remembering. I try to keep it simple. No one remembers 1 plus 1, or no one remembers 1 plus 5. You always put your concepts to use because we understand how the addition is to be done. So focus on understanding rather than remembering. For understanding, create your own examples, solve more examples, solve more problems, and once you're comfortable with the concepts, it's going to be simple. So if you know how to ride a bike, you don't need to remember. Automatically you are going to be able to ride a bike. So that is how it is. So is Indigo Learn notes enough for costing, sir, or we need to read ISN? All right. So, I will try to answer this in two broad categories. One, as far as the concepts are concerned. So we have covered all the concepts, and we have ensured that whatever is there in the study material, that definitely has been covered. And there are certain additional points also that we have covered. So as far as the problems are concerned, the questions are concerned, and the concepts are concerned, everything has been covered. But I would say, for more practice, for getting that knack, for having that speed in the examination, at least you take 3 or 4 previous examination questions, do that scenario building. Give yourself those 3 or 15 minutes. Isolate yourself in a room. Try to, answer that question paper in 3 hours time. See what, where you're going wrong, where you're, not able to answer, or what works for you, what does not work for you. Let's identify those pain points and work on it. So, that will give you a sense of how it is to be done. As far as theory is concerned, again, the notes that we have given, that should be sufficient. We have, covered everything. More specifically, what questions can be asked, only to that limited extent, what I can suggest is, go to the previous exam questions or the practice manual, identify the questions. See, sometimes what happens is they will ask for features of a particular item. As a student, we will end up writing what are the advantages or disadvantages, or maybe characteristics. So we fail to identify what is the question. By failing to identify what is the question, we end up giving a wrong answer. It's not that we don't know what the answer is. Probably, we have not understood the question rightly or correctly. So that is going to help. Then I find revision to be time consuming. So how should I revise each chapter efficiently? All right. What I would, really recommend is, yes, when you're doing the first revision, it is going to be time consuming. Let me tell you why. See, when we are, attending any class, what happens is you're always taken in a systematic manner by the faculty. So you're, always kind of applying the concept immediately after you have learned it. So it is, there in your mind fresh, and, you're always taken in a systematic manner. But then I'm talking more specifically about the first time that you're revising after, attending any class, costing or maybe any other class, is that it is the first time that you're on your own. It is the first time that you're trying to solve the questions by yourself. So don't try to cut short that process. For the first time that you're doing, I would recommend, take that pen, paper, and do the problem solving by yourself and give that time to yourself. But then when you're doing the first revision, identify the pain points. So, which are the concepts you are not able to do by yourself? Which are the concepts that you're able to do by yourself? Which are the questions that you are able to do in the first go? Which are the questions that you're not able to do? So I always, had that star mark questions. Okay, when, I was doing my first revision, question number 2 of this particular topic, I was not able to answer. So next time when I do, I try to answer, I try to revise those questions. So that is one way I used to ensure that, efficiently my revision is getting covered, and on the exam day I kind of revise everything. And second, what I do, or what I would also recommend you to do, is when you're doing the first revision, your job, your objective, your target as a student is identify those 2-3 questions which are comprehensive. See, in the class, what happens is we always, build topic by topic by topic. So we will start off with a small topic, then make it a little bigger, bigger, bigger. And then towards the end, we will always solve questions which covers all the topics of a particular chapter. So you identify those 4-5 questions in each chapter, which are comprehensive, which, are going to cover all the topics. So when you're revising the second time, just by doing that comprehensive question, all the small topics will get covered. So by that way, you will be able to efficiently revise each and every chapter. Identify your difficult areas, your difficult questions. It is going to be different for different students. So each student will have to, kind of put in that heart and effort in identifying and mark those, comprehensive questions, which are going to cover all the concepts, 4 or 5 concepts. So probably, in process costing, find a question which has all the equivalent unit concepts, WIP concept, LIFO, FIFO, weighted average concept. Cover that, prepare all the process accounts, process 1, process 2, process 3, normal, abnormal gain account, abnormal loss account, normal loss account, normal gain account. And then you will always, have an efficient comprehensive coverage. So that is what I would, suggest. Then next question that we have is, do I have to refer questions from outside? So it's a good question. I would say, going back to your practice manual, going back to previous exam questions, that will, really help you in 2 ways. One, it will give you enough practice, enough revision. And second, it will make your concepts only stronger. And now, if your specific question is, do I also have to refer to other other authors, other books? I would say it is, not required. Concept wise, we have covered. If you need additional practice, if you feel you need additional practice, then maybe you can, consider looking at other books. But I would not say it is absolutely necessary. If you really want to, go for the kill, then probably you can look at it. But then the problem is, if you refer to multiple books, if you refer to multiple authors, each faculty author will have a different way of approaching the subject. So chances are you might end up getting confused. So I would rather avoid such a scenario. At best, go back to institute's previous year exam questions, practice manual. RTPs is a good area again, and look at those solutions, and that's it. All right. So Abhishek is, asking a question which is though not very specifically related to the examination or the preparation strategy. His question is, please tell me what are the topics that forms core part for decision making in real life business, and those topics which we will learn in depth in CA final in respect of CNO. See, marginal costing is definitely, the fundamental, it has the fundamental principles which help you in decision making. So when you go to the final, there will be concepts which use in some way or the other marginal costing principles in order to build upon. So per se, marginal costing standalone also may not be enough, but then it forms the basis for you to understand how to take decisions. Decision making, as you come to final, you will learn it is a altogether different ball game, which uses certain basic fundamental principles of marginal costing. And Abhishek, just to say, see, foundation, it's like without your CPT, you cannot come to CA inter. Without your CA inter, you cannot go to final. So when you go to the real world also, the basic fundamental principles of process costing, batch costing, material, labor, etc., we need to understand that. So without that, it will not really make you a good, fundamentally sound person. And then what should an industrial trainee in FMGC sector needs to know about CMS subject? So if you're talking about FMGC sector, then I would say activity-based costing is definitely, one area which you should focus upon, because, it helps you in identifying product-wise, category-wise, segment-wise, probably department-wise, or probably, customer-wise profitability. So that is a very good area that you can touch upon. So I think, friends, we have sufficiently, covered all the areas, and we have taken some questions also from the students. So with that, with Team Indigo's permission, I think we can conclude the seminar and session. So one more question that comes in: theory areas which should be given more importance covered compared to other theories, that is those with more weightage and frequently asked. So definitely, your first chapter where you have the cost concepts and your budget and budgetary control. So these two topics generally I've seen they have more theory questions. So the chances are, you'll have at least couple of questions from each of those topics usually. And when you come to areas like, maybe process costing, batch costing, contract costing, methods of costing, usually you don't find questions, because these are all very sector related, business related, and the practical side of it as to how it is to be done. So you can expect questions from the first topics and budgetary control. Maybe you can have a couple of questions from activity based costing, and probably difference between Halsley plan, Roman plan, or you can have certain questions on how to do the timekeeping in case of employee cost. So those are the important areas. But then from standard, marginal, or from the methods of costing, I don't see much of theory coming. So friends, it was great interacting with you, and you can always reach out to the Indigo team for any doubts or any concerns that you're having, and I'm sure that we will always try to solve them for you. It was indeed a pleasure interacting with all of you, and maybe I will just request Sriram or Surat sir to take over and help us in concluding.
Students, I think we can conclude the meeting. You guys can log off. We will get back to you with details of other classes, Zoom sessions from tomorrow onwards by email or notification, as the case may be. If you have subscribed to our classes for other subjects, you'll get the email and notification. If not, you will not get. Okay. Thanks a lot. You guys can log off. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Sriram. Thank you so much.
Thanks, madam.